I haven't seen anybody yet.
Right. So yeah, I'm Steve Abbott.
I'm Jason Grayston.
We're representing SaskOutdoors, so formerly known as the Saskatchewan Outdoor Environmental Education Association. We are here to create connections to the other world. That's what we want to do. So we're starting this orientation is just kind of a brief to get you at the winter camp with the kind of things that you need just for your basic head to toe layering, just dressing properly. We'll get into a little bit of the clothing options. Maybe you'll recognize some stuff that you have already in your closets, or if you're looking to purchase something, like to look for in a garment. We'll also get into some sleep systems and some tent stuff after as well. And we're being hosted here by Fresh Air Experience. So I'd like to welcome Ron up to say hello and just thank him very, very much for allowing us.
Thanks very much for having us here.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Well, welcome to the folks that happen to be able to be right here, and welcome to everybody who's watching on the wide world web and YouTube, I guess. So hopefully there's lots of people that will get some information from this little session tonight, and encourage you to get out and camp when you don't have to take your mosquito repellent. And that's the big bonus about winter camping as well. So thank you again for coming out, and thank you for those of you on the web for joining us. And I'll just turn it over back to you, and you can carry on. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. So when we're talking up here, one thing that I want you guys all to realize is what works for one person might not work for the next. Okay, when we're out and we're doing different activities, our bodies are all burning the calories from the food that we ate differently. We're producing different amounts of radiant heat and moisture. So all the clothing systems that we have available to us, we're going to have to pick and choose and find what really works well for us. Over time, we're going to get that. So this winter camping experience is just kind of that hopeful intro. Bring way more than you need, and then figure out what you didn't use, what works best for you in the situation. We're hoping to do some higher activity stuff, different types of hikes and games to get your blood going. Therefore, you're going to need different layers, different clothing options, and then there's going to be times where we're going to be moving less. And we're going to be around the campfire, and we're going to have to dress differently there. So that brings me to the topic of layering. I mean, I'm sure everybody in here has heard layer up when we go outside, right? I like to think of a layered system when I'm dressing for the winter as my thermostat. Okay, so if I just have a couple layers on, I don't have that adjustability. So if I just have a big parka on and I'm wearing my thin shirt underneath, and I start moving and I start getting hot, I don't have anything to remove because underneath I'm going to freeze, obviously. If I'm outside and I take that coat off, I'm going to freeze. So a layered system allows you to have different components to take on and off, and it allows you to adjust with your activity, adjust with the conditions of the day, and just be comfortable throughout the time that you're out in an environment. And we could literally talk about all of these different layers and garments and materials for hours on end. So this is just meant to be kind of a basic as to what each layer is supposed to do, and then and some of your options. We've got some traditional options like wools, and then we've got some more of the high-tech gear that take advantage of things like Primaloft and down and things like that. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff at our disposal tonight, and like I said, we probably have more stuff than we'll actually even end up getting to. So that's my little bit of an introduction spiel. Dr. Giesbrecht has a lot of really, really good papers out, and one of the quotes that he uses in a paper that you guys will get in a little info package afterwards and mailed out to you is, there's no such thing as bad weather, there's only bad clothes. So realistically, no matter what the weather is outside, there is a clothing setup that'll help you be outside in it and comfortable. Whether it's -40 or plus 20, you'll be able to use this knowledge of your clothing layers to get you ready. So obviously it's important that we do this now and have this chat before we get out there, so then you can show up with the gear that you need that's on the gear list. And again, that gear list is kind of condensed. We'll add stuff to it afterwards in terms of what you would take if you're going by yourself. So yeah, really quick thing on boots. Obviously we're gonna need winter boots. You come with something unlined, you're gonna freeze. I think that just kind of goes without saying, but definitely need something with an insulation inside. Now these three boots are about equal in kind of the the value of keeping you warm, the clo value, in terms of like their rating. But they deal with moisture in a few different ways. And moisture is one of those big things you're going to hear come up in our conversation tonight. Is that's what you have to control. If you have moisture up against your skin, it's going to make you cold. It's going to make you miserable. So all of our clothing is basically has that in mind. It's controlling that moisture level. So these are old military boots. You can get these in town, CMS, and they're really warm, but they're also really heavy, and they're completely waterproof, but they don't breathe at all. So this is basically a rubber boot, but they've got a really neat kind of technology down at the bottom with different airspace and different felts that keep your foot insulated.
Steve, can you pass this around?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So like they're really good boots if you're stationary. Okay, so if you're gonna go ice fishing, that's a good boot, right? If you're somewhere where you're gonna be sitting for a while, they aren't the best if you're hiking long distances because they are so clunky. A boot like this, it's a leather outer. It's got something called Gore-Tex lining. So that's a waterproof membrane that is actually fairly breathable, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And it has a really good layer of insulation on the inside as well. They're a lighter boot than that, but the benefit obviously is they lace up nice and tight. And if you're doing lots of hiking, this is a really good winter boot option for you because it's nice and form fits your shoe or your foot. And it's just a good option to have something like that. Downfall is when you're not moving and you're not generating a lot of heat in that, your foot's going to freeze very quickly. And also, I'll introduce Joe a little bit later. He's going to be talking about sleep systems. And the boots that you have are going to allow you to dry your boot off in different ways throughout the night. So what I mean is get that moisture that your foot's accumulating throughout the day out so you can start dry the next day. This is a really good option. This is probably the option most of you have, is something with a removable liner. Okay. What's good about these is you can take them out. You can dry this separately from the boot itself. So it's kind of a good modular boot system that you can have different layers of lining stacked up underneath your felt and everything like that. But again, they're on the clunky side, not very breathable until you take the lining out itself. So just a few real quick boot options. I won't get too much into it. If you have questions about any of the stuff that we're talking about, for sure at the end we can get into more details and more specifics. So as I was saying, for the layering system, we want to know what each layer does. Okay, so if we're looking at a base layer, you've probably heard the word base layer before. What we're trying to do with our base layer is battle evaporative heat loss. Okay, so whenever we have water on our skin, our body is trying to get rid of it. That's when we're overheating, we sweat because that's our way of cooling off, right? That transfer of energy from taking that liquid water and turning it into a gas, it takes energy from our body and it cools us off. So when we are in a cold weather environment, that can be very dangerous. And that's why the term cotton kills is out there, because cotton is a type of material that will actually hold that against your skin, keep you wet for longer, therefore cold for longer. And if you are stuck, if you're out hiking or camping and you have a wet cotton t-shirt, it's very difficult to dry out. So we can look at different materials that do this moisture wicking action, where they take the water from your skin and push it away. And basically there's two main classifications that are being used nowadays, and that's specific polyesters and merino wool. Merino wool comes from a type of sheep, merino sheep. I don't know the Latin name or anything, but it comes from that sheep, and it's very fine wool. Now, wool is amazing. It's an amazing technology. And I like wool because it is evolutionarily adapted to dealing with moisture. Okay, because the sheep have evolved in areas of earth that have a lot of precipitation and see a lot of humidity, and therefore evolution has created this garment. So different wool has different properties that are going to do different things, and merino wool is very fine. It feels nice against the skin. You don't have that. Everyone always thinks wool is itchy all the time, but again, we can get into more of the details of these garments after. But our base layer, again, that's just to get the moisture off our skin. That's the 100% use of this. It's just to keep us dry. It's pushing it away. Hydrophobic versus hydrophilic are two things that you might find if you do any research. Hydrophobic, it's afraid of water, it's going to be pushing it away from your skin. Hydrophilic, it loves water, it's going to hold it up against you. So cotton is one of those hydrophilic, water-liking fabrics. So you want to avoid it. The second way, the second layer, the mid layers, that's to trap all of this. Okay, right now we are pushing heat off of our body. Okay, radiant heat loss. So if I stand completely still, my body is heating up a very thin layer of air around me. But if I start going like this, it's obviously going to blow away, right, from the air that is transferring across my skin. It's blowing away that heat that I've stored in that thin layers of air. Now, our clothing is meant to trap that heat. Okay, for our air mid layers, it's meant to hold on to that heat inside of little air pockets. So different fabrics do that in a number of different ways. I tend to like wool because it really does a good job of that even when it's wet. So I don't want to get into the super science of wool and all the cell structure, so I won't touch on that. But it is really a neat product for that. But then when we look into things like downs and Primaloft and really compressible garments, there's obviously some really good trade-offs. Wool can be very heavy. These items can be very compressible and lightweight, so you can add them into your layering system without a relative large cost to your back, basically, from all the stuff you have on. So again, keeping us dry is our base layer, holding on to that radiant heat and further facilitating that water to leave our body, because our base layer will help to push some of that water vapor out. And then the final layer is our shell. Okay, so that's stopping the convection. Okay, that's when any air current is coming by, again, blowing away that stored heat. Okay, so our base layer is going to stop that from happening, and it's also going to protect us from outside condensation. Now, something you're going to want to look at is getting some of that stored water vapor out. So that's when you start getting into ventilations and different zip methods to release that air vapor. So that's the three main categories of layering. Okay, keep us dry, hold on to our warmth, and keep out our wind and our water, so we're not adding anything else in.
Does anybody have any questions so far?
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on like mid-layer bottoms?
Yeah, so and I want to bring Ron into this too, because he has a lot of really good information on some of the exact fabrics. So maybe this is a good opportunity to bring Ron in and talk about specifics.
Thanks. Good question, because lots of times, yeah, we are talking about the upper body because that's where the torso, the more heat is being generated, and so on. Our legs are a little bit less, won't say less important, but a little easier to kind of deal with. But on the base layers, dryness is that key. But companies like Patagonia, for instance, as a top from them, it's a zone, or it's a layer 3 level of protection. So it's got dryness and a certain amount of warmth. There's a 1 and a 2 below it, which are thinner. Wouldn't necessarily recommend that for winter time because they don't have any warmth, right? And you don't want to carry more stuff than you have. So you want to really look at versatility in your garments. If I take a look at this guy here, tags off, but we've got a grid waffle on the inside, and that actually traps more of this air that Steve's been referring to. And in the legs, what you're doing is you can use a heavier grid underneath a windproof fabric, you know, like this. And if we take a look at this pant here, I don't have this is not the North Face pant. Some of the pants will have inside zip and a vented gaiter in the bottom. So you get a chimney effect. You can get air coming up through here and taking out the moist, humid air through the vent in the leg. Those are really good for being able to adjust again for this producing heat and not producing. When you're battening down the hatches, close everything up, conserving as much as you can. Doing something, open up the vents, let the air get away. So in merino wool, you get different gauges of fabric. So 150 is basically a very lightweight, 200 midweight, a 260 heavier. So you can make some choices as to, you know, again, very individual. You know, how much heat do I produce? How much do I lose? What's going to work for me? But always revert back to those principles. Base layer, dryness, some warmth if I need it there. outer layer, windproofness. And you can get pants with Primo-Loft in it, which is basically a waterproof insulation that you can kind of maybe carry in your pack. So when you get to where you're going, you know, you're starting a fire, you're setting up your tent, you're way less active, it's going to keep you warm. Because, you know, the heated space is right there, very small one. It's going to be, you know, your shelter for the night. So you have to deal with that. In terms of dealing with that outer shell, there's soft shell fabrics out here that are windproof, yet very, very breathable. And something like that is excellent for doing winter camping. This fabric right here, this is not going to breathe enough for most people when they're snowshoeing, skiing, you know, getting into the place where you're going to spend the night. So you want something very breathable, windproof. We sell stuff for like cross-country skiing, which I call directional ski wear, windproof in the front, breathable in the back. For winter camping, not so good once you get to where you're going because there's too much heat out the back. If you've got any kind of wind or whatnot, you're not that active, it's going to pour out the back. So I guess that's some of the points that you want to kind of look for when you're looking at in the varying layers and dealing with the bottom. But the bottoms are pretty easy to look after. I mean, you need maybe like 3 pieces, you know, and you can you know, layer up, layer down as you need. So any other questions?
I'd like to comment that I love having a really great merino base layer, and you might spend a bunch of money on it, but my last full layer was 10 years I had it, and I skied how many times in it, and it, you know, even though I got a couple holes in it, it's still going, you know, like good quality stuff's gonna last a long time, and it's very comfortable, and I think worth that base layer. I love my base layer.
Yeah, and I think when we talk merino, it has that unique ability to be temperature regulating. Keep you cool when you need to be cool, keep you warm when you want to keep the heat in, right? And a good synthetic can do essentially the same. You have a very, very high durability factor to the synthetics. Like I've got some pieces that are going on 10 to 15 years old, wear them tons. Malden Mills is the fabric, is the company that make the fabric, and everybody in the outdoor industry uses it, whether it be Marmot or North Face or Patagonia or Arc'teryx, everybody uses some Malden Mill fabrics in their use. So I think we got to get going.
Yeah, cool. One other word on durability. Wool is, again, I always come back to wool. I love wool. It has such a durability factor because the individual fibers of wool can be bent tens of thousands of times before they start to break down, before they start to break. Very stretchable, and they'll go back to their space, as compared to other natural fibers such as cotton, for instance. Now wool, again, I don't know, this number, just kind of a number that they throw out there, but most wool products can absorb up to 30% of the garment's weight in water before you start to feel clammy and wet in it. And so wool has this amazing ability to keep you warm even when it's wet. And part of that is due to the cell structure of the wool. It's a crimp inside the hair, each individual hair. And wool, by the way, can be from many different animals. You can have bison wool, you can have sheep wool, you can have alpaca wool. It's just a matter of dealing with that product and making a certain basically thread or yarn with it. So you can have kind of loose wools like this with a lot of airspace in it, or you can have tighter felted wools that are going to be better at blocking the wind. But it's just a fantastic. So even your base layer, that water dealing power, I guess, that even when it's a little bit damp, you're still going to get the warmth out of merino wool and your other wool layers. So it's a fantastic part of your system.
What's your nickname for that brown sweater?
Oh yeah, I don't always name my clothes. This one I call the heat, simply the heat.
That's good.
It's fantastic. It cost me $13 many years ago at Valley Village. It's my go-to. You know, in the cold, I get my merino wool onesie. Yeah, it's got the butt flap. That's how it works. So I like this because you don't have the air gaps. Sometimes it depends on your jacket. If the jacket goes down and comes up, you might feel it or not. But I do the merino wool there, and then the merino. It's another merino wool. It's a little bit thicker than the heat than this, and then the shell there. So, like I said, I like to reinforce the fact that what works for one person may not work for another, because it's going to be so dependent on your heat. You've probably heard someone that sleeps cold or someone that sleeps hot. It's just the amount of heat that they push out of their body, and then of course dealing with that moisture. So if it gets really cold, I like to turn it down. Okay, this is my winter parka, so to speak, okay, and this is the beauty of down. You can pull it out of that bag, and now with this and my layering system here, and then the shell, I'm good down to -40 if I'm not moving around. Okay, this has a nice loft to it. This again, you gotta look for deals. Joe is the king of deals. I got this at a shop in PA, David Nurse, that was closing on. I got it for $20. So, you gotta look for deals, and realistically, you're gonna find them if you're looking around. And you probably have a lot of stuff in your closet already, like different polyesters that are gonna help in working base layers, and like different weights, different thicknesses of mid layers that you can use. Anything you want to add, Joe?
No, I think you did next. Oh, let's talk about.
So, I miss socks. I always do double socks, a liner sock. So again, to deal with the moisture, get that your feet collect a lot of moisture due to condensation and just perspiration of sweat. So a liner sock that really quickly pushes that moisture off, and then a nice wool sock. This is a 95% wool, 5% spandex to keep its shape. Because sometimes wool can get a little bit stretched out if you've got a loose knit like this. So the spandex helps. Also, this really helps restrict blisters. So even if you're wearing 2 socks in the summertime, instead of having that direct rub on your heel to your boot, you'll get the rub happening here, and the friction will be absorbed by the sock itself. So that is another benefit of having the double layers. And I do take that into my gloves as well. Acrylic is something you're going to see a lot if you're looking around at the gear that maybe Canadian Tire, or looking at some of your stuff in your closet perhaps. And I'd like to compare the wool to the acrylic. My hands are soaked in these after about half hour outside walking around, getting working. But the wool really breathes nicely. And you can actually get liner gloves as well. But I like to use a glove inside a heavy mitt. Okay, these are, so the gloves, I've got my dexterity, I've got my mitt. This is just I don't even know, a Sherpa is the name of it. It's just kind of like a fake wool, and then a leather glove. Now the leather blocks all wind, relatively good at dealing with water until it gets really saturated. But with this setup too, again, I'm down to -40. If you're a little bit more active, you can take a non-insulated shell with your glove. So these are really good systems for cross-country skiing or snowshoeing, stuff like that. Blocking the wind, dealing with moisture a little bit, and that's kind of the name of the game. Again, common thread. Now, real quick on headwear, you lose a lot of heat to your head and your neck. You think about where your major blood or your major arteries run, right in here, right in here, and right in here. So these are areas you really want to think about, and here usually covered with your layers, but up here is somewhere that's often missed. Buffs are a fantastic piece of gear. Obviously, you can do so much stuff with this little tube. This is a merino wool. I can double or triple it to make it thicker. I can pull it up over my head as a bit of a balaclava if I want. Here's a balaclava here. And it helps. It's again, that versatility in the gear. I'm able to do different things with one piece of equipment and transfer it across all different things, whether I'm walking to work or coming down the mountain on skis or something like that. One thing is the stink factor with some of our polypropylenes and polyesters. Man-made materials tends to actually hold on to the scent quite a lot. So this is my polypropylene Helly Hansen toque. If I really sweat in this a lot, it starts to stink. And so that is one thing. I can't find a good wool toque, so I bought some wool. I'm going to make one. But that's just, that's always an option too if you can't find the stuff. But yeah, that's one thing. This is a fake fur hat, but you really can't beat a real fur hat. If you've got a fur hat at home, or your grandparents or your parents, they're awesome, right? What we do when we're looking at clothing is we're trying to emulate what the animals wear all the time, right? What they can grow. And we look at some of the technologies in polar bear hair, for instance, being a hollow fiber. We look at that, and and we try to replicate that. So again, looking at those areas where the arteries are and just taking care of those. Are there any questions?
Back to the socks, what were you
Yeah.
using for the your base layer sock?
The liner. So this is actually, and I haven't found anyone else that is in love with these socks as much as I am. But they're called copper sole socks, and you know what? Maybe it's just my feet, but I've never had socks that keep my feet quite as warm. And they're nice and tight.
But what are they made of?
I'm not 100% sure. I know they have copper in them, and they don't have much cotton,
Cotton
if
socks?
anything at all. But no, you don't ever want to wear cotton socks again. You just always want to avoid 100% cotton. But I think these are mainly, I can't even tell. I'd have to look at the packaging again. All I know, again, is it works for me, so that's what I buy. And I've tried the Smart Wools, which work fantastic for other people that I know. Smart Wool doesn't necessarily work good on my feet, so I just go with what works for me. So again, we go back to what we find works in a variety of situations. So, and these are, you get these, they're relatively cheap at Mark's Work Warehouse. I think I've yammered on quite enough.
Do you want Ron, do you have anything
Yeah.
do you want to add there, or things that you guys have in store or things like that to
Yeah.
think about?
Sure. I didn't bring up. Well, actually, we have. I'll just take this guy's foot. We already took his head, so he's fine. And he doesn't need a tube, obviously, because he has no head, so he's not losing the heat out there. But what's happened in soft technology in the last number of years is that they can do a lot of things with the progressive knitting of socks. So this is a Smart Wool sock. We carry a Smart Wool and Icebreaker in the merino wools. And if you take a look at the top of the sock, what's inside out, you know, the patterns that are involved there, that's not just to make it look cool, that's to make it function, right? So this needs to fit, this is what they call a PhD sock. So it comes from sheep that have graduated. And so it's, you pay a little more money for that. I mean, because they do work for a lot of people and a lot of different reasons too. So what they've done is that they've doubled up the wool underneath the ball of the foot and heel. They still have quite a bit of heavy wool in here, and it's a loop knit, so it stays nice and deep. And these should be washed inside out to maintain that loft in the sock. And here they have zones that are designed for the fit here, and believe it or not, the place in your foot where the most perspiration glands are, the top of your feet, not the bottom, the top. And so this is designed to take the moisture and put it into your boot liner. Remember, we talked about getting as far away from your body as possible. The sock can do that. We've also sold socks that actually have a chain knit that actually brings the heat out the top. Now this boot here, it was passed around, the army boot, it's got a valve on the side. You can open it up. And did I open it up? We had a mic here. It's breathing. It's pretty interesting. So
It's
getting
really
rid
cool.
of that moisture inside your footwear. See, so this doesn't breathe. Well, this doesn't go through here, but it's actually a mechanical breathing system to force the moisture and humidity out of the boot, out the side. Okay, so they've addressed it, and you have to address it with your clothing and with your footwear and so on. So sock technology, you buy these in different weights, lengths. We carry a mountaineering sock, which is very heavy and looply knit. So it's a pretty good arrangement. In terms of the toque, this company that makes this, they make a Polartec toque, and it's actually probably we have Polartec fleece on the top, windstopper fleece on the side. So you don't want the wind to go through on your ears because they're sticky out there, and even if they're covered, they're gonna get cold. You need it to breathe enough from the top, and the windstopper is getting to the water, windproofing around here and the breathable on the top. Works really, really well. You can get ones with flaps, you can tie them down if you need to. And we also handle ear bags, and I call them skinny earmuffs. And Little Sport makes a cross-country ski earmuff, which you can put on your head, covers your ears, and wear a light tube on the top. Because when you're exercising again, there's a lot of heat that comes out of the top. Sometimes we want it to come out, sometimes we don't. So you kind of have to, address that. Hoods on garments. Now Steve's down jacket, good hood on it, right? It'll save your butt. You can actually take your hood off sometimes and pack it with you, like this guy right here. You know, I mean, you can pack a wood by itself if you need to in your sleeping bag if you're need to put it on at night over top of your balaclava. It really works. So that's all techniques that you can use, but you have to have the tools in your toolbox to practice the techniques, right? So that's all stuff that we can add to what we're talking about here. Gloves, people come in and say, "What's your warmest glove?" It's a mitt. Sorry, it's not a glove, it's a mitt. And layering systems like that, so you can pull out the inside, works really well. Balaclavas, we have all kinds of balaclavas, different weights and breathabilities and windproofnesses to them. So yeah, I guess the thing is that just look around. The whole idea of this session is to kind of give you some principles to shop by or under, and the value villages of the world, you can score some awesome deals. Because people are moving across the country, they're looking in their closet. Man, I got stuff in there that I want to take with me. I still have my original 60/40 parka, and Joe and I were talking about before we started the session about the 60/40 parka and how much of a staple it was in people's outdoor clothing. And it's not sold here so much anymore, but it's apparently in China or Japan it's still sold. And Gore, being a North American company, kind of monopolized that windproof breathable thing, but really, it doesn't breathe as much as the 60/40 parka does. I mean, a good breathable jacket, you'll see frost collecting on the back. There's that much heat and humidity coming out. You never see that in a Gore-Tex jacket. Where is it? Inside.
Could you explain the mix, 60/40?
That's polyester nylon. I mean, not nylon, cotton, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a synthetic fiber with a cotton fiber, so it actually allows the breathability, but it has pretty good waterproofness to it.
When you get into blends, it starts to get into like a whole other debate of when they're mixing products.
Yeah.
It's amazing the technology that they have.
Yeah. There's something else that came along with 60/40. That big fresh air sale.
That's right.
We love the 640
Question?
Yeah. Question.
What do you have at the front of your rack there?
Okay.
Oh, skirts.
Yeah.
She's
And I'll take this jacket off. One thing when Ron was talking about hoods is some of this the new high tech here has so much little adjustments that you can make. Like I can just pull a little drawstring, and now I can completely contour my hood to my head. And it has the drawstrings in very specific spots, so it doesn't compress all of the stuff that's keeping me warm. But it's nice and form fit now. It's like a part of my head. But I can't put it on because it's not mine. But this is a and now you lose a lot of heat to your side, obviously, and a lot of. Where's my knife?
come on, put it on.
So obviously a lot of coats just come to the waist. They're called bomber style because most people want a versatile coat that they can take to the office and then they can go out and camp with the next weekend. But because buying full coats can get expensive, so a lot of time they're cut at the bomber style, right at the waist. So this is a nice little extension, and again you've got the ephemeral arteries in here. So this brings it down. It stops the conduction of your butt. So when your butt's on something cold, you're immediately starting to heat it up because your butt is colder, warmer than the object, and that's just physics. And so this is a nice little extension. Now this is a traditional down one. Can I pass these around, Nat?
Yeah, sure.
And this is Nat's homemade wool one. And so you can imagine that, or you can see the difference in the benefits there of weight-wise, anyway, and packability. I think it's a good time to bring Joe up and Joe. Again, this is an awesome time to ask any kind of questions you have about specific materials like Primaloft, for instance, that's in this jacket versus down versus lycra versus acrylics, all that kind of stuff we can do kind of one-on-one afterwards. So I don't want to overwhelm you too much now, but without further ado, I'll introduce Joe Milligan. He is our representative from Parts for this event, and he has a plethora of knowledge to share with us. So,
Steve, I'll have to give you a hand moving some things over.
Sure.
Go ahead. You're gonna slide in. And we're gonna put the bag down there. I'm gonna transfer this.
we practiced this in church cats earlier. Okay.
Thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
My name is Joe Milligan. I'm with Saskatchewan Parks, and we're very happy to be partnering with Saskatchewan Outdoors as well as Fresh Air Experience on this, and we're very happy to see everyone out here. As was mentioned earlier, winter's a time you don't have mosquitoes and a lot of mud, and it's one of the best times to be out. You've had a very good introduction on the type of clothing, types of materials, some of the options that you can have. What I'm going to be doing is talking to you about sleeping. And by the end of the day, you will be ready for a good sleep. But like all things in winter camping, you have to actually prepare and you have to do things before you actually need to. Other things, what I'm going to do is, it was mentioned earlier also, everyone is going to be a little bit different in how they prepare. I'm going to show you how I've been preparing for winter camping for 35 plus years. You may modify, you may change it. I'm going to show you some of the options that you have available to you, some of the materials, etc. Now, a couple things about getting ready for bed. It's not just about your sleeping bag. A good sleep starts before you actually get into your bed. It starts with a good meal, eating properly. I always like to say in winter camping, you have 4 good meals a day. Before you go to bed, and think about something. When you get cold, whether it be in a summer camp or anything else, it oftentimes hits you about 2:30 in the morning. That's because you've eaten early, 5, 6 o'clock, and all those calories have burned off. So before you go to bed, make sure you have something really solid to eat. You want at least 2, 3, 4, 500 calories. You want a good hot drink with brown sugar and some margarine, a bunch of everything that's going to be really rich. You want a really good snack. You want something that's going to kick in at that time when your stuff has been burned off. And the other thing is too, is because in winter we're usually we're eating 5:30 or 6 about the time it gets dark. We're eating earlier than usual. So you need to make sure you have that to kick in to keep you warm. You also need to make sure that you have something in your sleeping bag or near your sleeping bag. So when you do get cold at night, you can throw something in, some Gorp, chocolate, something like that. It will just kick your little generator again. So a lot of the foundation has already been laid with what Ron was talking about, what Steve was talking about with your layers, type of clothing. The other thing is too, you need to think about is the whole process of getting ready for bed is going to produce a lot of heat because it's a very busy and a very active time. So what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to start off talking about how I'm going to lay my sleeping pad out, my equipment out, and then I'm going to talking about the layers of what I'm going to actually be dressing in. You have to think about it's not just about the insulation that's going to be supplied by your sleeping bag, it's also the layers that are going to be insulating you from the ground. So a lot of you may have just sort of a mattress or an insulate pad. These have been around for ages. They come in different thicknesses, and they used to be readily available. But I'll talk about some of the modern technology. So I'll oftentimes start off with just one layer on the ground. Second layer will be a second pad like you just saw, or something like this. Fresh Air is very fortunate to have samples of some of the modern pads that are available. Now, what's interesting, if those of you who are old school and going back in time have ever slept on an air mattress in cold weather, they're extremely cold because your body literally has to heat up that layer below it. Modern pads are absolutely fantastic, and they actually do justice. So what they do is not only the air, but they're also filled with a synthetic lining or a down lining, depending what kind you buy, and they do work. They oftentimes have a built-in pump, so literally once you get it in, you're not using your mouth to blow it up, you're literally pushing back and forth on it, and it inflates. So well worth the effort for summer or winter. So you have your base layers underneath you. Next, you'll need a good sleeping bag. I'm going to talk about a single sleeping bag system, and then I'm going to talk to you about a double sleeping bag system. So what I do, so I'm getting ready for bed. I'm going to basically, I'm going to have a liner. I'm going to have a sleeping bag, which can be either a synthetic, such as Polar Guard, or it can be a down. Bags are designed for different types of people. Women's bags will be different designed for men's than a men's bag because, excuse me, physiologically, women are slightly different. You'll get bags that are narrow. You'll get bags that are wide at the shoulders. If you ever are purchasing a bag, make sure that you're comfortable in the bag itself, depending on how you dress. They also, Ron mentioned something about clothing. where basically they'll have various vents in them. Bags too will have a double zipper, so you can allow ventilation by just undoing the zipper at the base. So I have my bag out. I have a few other items. I'm going to start getting ready when it comes to the clothing. Now, one of the things is that I always have a separate set of clothing that I dress in. I don't want to go to bed with clothing that I've been, or the base layers I've been wearing all day. So I will have a separate set of long underwear, long undershirt, and everything else like that. Those will be ready for me. So when I do that, we'll just use what Ron has shown us earlier on, a pair of long underwear, a long undershirt. I'll oftentimes tuck that long undershirt into my long underwear so that it doesn't slip out and provide a cold spot. If it's going to be a little bit colder, I might wear a fleece vest, just something that can basically cover my core area. Usually it goes down a little bit below the bum and keeps me warm in that area. I will have a pair of dry socks. These are strictly going to be my sleeping socks. Same with the other layers. These ones, as you can see, they're a very old school looking Norwegian wool socks with about 95% wool and lycra. But for my foot, this is what I find comfortable. When I start taking off layers of clothes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the layers that I take off and I'm going to put underneath my sleeping bag. So I have an anorak here, a JanSport anorak. I'm going to take this. I'm going to place it under there. My insulating jacket, my thick layer that I no longer will need. There's a couple things that you can do with this. You can lay it underneath you like I just demonstrated, or one of the challenges is keeping your feet warm. Your feet are at the extremities. Your blood has to go from your heart all the way down to the tips of your toes. If anything's going to get cold in the night, it's oftentimes your feet. So a couple things that you can do. You can put a hot water bottle down there. Keeping a hot water bottle down at the end of your feet is one way of not only keeping water fresh for the day, but also keeps the feet warm. The other thing you can do is basically taking that and tucking it in. I like to tuck the arms into the pockets. Don't thrash around. You've just applied a whole new layer to insulating your feet. So that's one way of doing it. You can take this, you can use it as a pillow. The other thing too is think about where your body's going to press. You're going to be pressing in a little bit in your head, your shoulders, and at your hips. Take that, I like to push it down a little bit further. Make sure my arms are out. There's a little bit of layer. Now also, you don't want to push it just one spot because what's going to happen, you're going to have that sort of pump in the back here, in your back. Keep it a little bit uncomfortable. So I might take another layer, putting it near my shoulders just to keep my body up. I mentioned the feet earlier on. Sometimes you might want to use a pair of down booties or insulated booties that you can put on. Excuse me. That'll prevent you from having to put an extra layer on your feet. So I'm getting ready for bed. I've laid out my extra clothing. I have good layers on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide inside my sleeping bag. I have a liner. Again, you want to take the moisture away from your body, putting it into an outside layer from the wicking layers you have. This is something that can happen, or this is one thing that you can do. Headlamp. Headlamps have batteries in them. They're basically suppressed by cold. Most modern sleeping bags will have a pocket on the inside. Depending on the size of your headlamp, sliding that in there, great place for it. You can put cameras, batteries, whatever else you might need within that pocket. So putting that in there. The other thing is too, you are going to have wet items. You're going to have items that you really don't want to freeze. So when I slide those in, or things I'm going to do is, if I have wet socks, I'm going to take these wet socks. This may sound nasty, but I'm going to take these wet socks, and I'm actually going to slide those up in an underlayer between my body, between my layer, or between this layer and here. What that's doing is basically you're using your body as a means of drying those out. So I might put them under here, I might put them on my chest. You're basically going to be lying yourself. Your mitts are the same way. Things I'm going to do is when I lie down in the sleeping bag, I might put my mitts underneath. I might put my mitts in between, next to my thighs. But what you're doing is you're preventing these from freezing, because if they freeze, you're thinking about your extremities. You're getting up, your hands are going to be cold, you're putting them into a cold, frozen mitt. Take them into your sleeping bag with you. Think about that when you're purchasing a bag. All that stuff's going to go into you. A lot of sleeping bags you'll see are going to be very refined. They're made very efficiently. But from a practical point of view, think about how is it going to function when I do have things to dry out. So taking those mitts inside with you, those small gloves that Steve had, those also go into you. You can put them into the pants, putting them on your thighs, whatever else like that. You're going to say, well, that's going to be awful cold. It will be for a second, but the thing is as much as you're going to be moving around and everything else like that, your body is going to be building up a lot of heat. Also, what I would suggest is before you do this process, do some jumping jacks. Move around, jump around, anything else like that to get the body moving. And when you do put those cold items in there, it'll feel a little bit better. Or even keeping them in your jacket. One thing that's really nice is I have one of the winter jackets I have. It actually has inside pockets that basically cover from the front zipper towards the back. And I can literally pile all my extra clothing there to keep it from freezing. So I'm inside my sleeping bag. I put that in there. What am I going to do with my ski boots? Think about that extreme thing. If you're out winter camping for a couple of times, your ski boots might be your main boot. So what I always do is I put them inside my sleeping bag in between my legs. So when I'm lying down, each of my boots are right there. You're not going to be rolling around the same as you would any. You're going to basically be sleeping like this. For years, my wife, I think she thought I was dead because I used to sleep like this all the time. So you're sleeping your boots, and basically what you'll do with your boots, you'll undo them, undo the laces as much as possible, and put them in between your legs. Final thing is a water bottle. Water bottles can be buried in the snow inverted, so that they're basically, you put hot water in them before you go to bed. Invert them like that because water is going to freeze from the top down. If you put them like that, the top freezes and you can't get them out, but freeze them in a snowdrift like that or in a kitchen where you can find it again. But also I like actually keeping a water bottle with me. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I need to have a snack or I need water, the water's there. And again, usually I put the water, sometimes warm water, near my feet, somewhere between my legs, and that's just a place to store it. It sounds cluttered, and yes, it is. But you'll be tired and you'll be ready. And that's just one way of dealing with ensuring that you have water at the end of the day, or I should say in the morning. And the other thing is too is you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is you get your stove going, you pour that in there, you have a base you can pile snow in, and you're already a foundation getting a hot drink into you really quickly. Finally is on my head. I have a balaclava. This is actually a Nomex balaclava. Again, one of the deals I found. But really comfortable. It's woolly. It's soft. And don't underestimate comfort. If something really feels nasty on you, you're not going to sleep. Make sure what you have feels comfortable in your skin. This feels comfortable in my skin when I'm sleeping. If you don't have a balaclava or you're not comfortable with a balaclava because it makes you feel enclosed, a toque's always a good idea. Having some sort of toque on your head. It was mentioned about the two buffs. Having a buff that you can pull over. Buffs are not only just around your neck, they can be pulled up around your head. And you can actually use it as a balaclava by putting your toque on. But always have a toque with you. So, any questions? Yes.
I guess so. One, I have a comment. So you're talking about that little pocket. So it's also good for contact lenses.
Good point. Excellent point. They don't freeze.
They'll freeze. Yeah, that sucks.
Excellent idea.
And then so maybe I don't want to. So let's say I've got furry boots and they're all covered in snow, and I don't want to put them in my sleeping bag.
Brush them off.
Brush them off. Do it anyway. What if I just don't want to put them? Do you have another suggestion?
I put them underneath your sleeping bag. Okay. What I do is you can take your stuff sack that you have your sleeping bag in, put them inside your stuff sack, and put them right there. That point, that little crotch in between, so you have your knee.
That's your knee crotch.
Yeah, your knee pit. Put it under your knee pit. I've done that before. And the other thing is too is having a small little brush. I have a little brush that I bought 35 years ago at Army Navy, for those who remember. And I brush it off, and I've had it for eons. And military issues, there are people with little whisk brushes. This is a small little whisk brush that you can brush off and get all that frost and everything in between your layers. you want to keep everything dry. That's absolutely essential. So, middle of the night, you get cold, you have your snacks with you, you can throw a little bit of cork, chocolate chips, whatever else you need to get that engine going again. When you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is, after you get dressed, or sometimes even before, depending where you are, start your stove. Get a hot drink going on so you can get breakfast, get something warm in you. Because remember, as Steve and Ron and everyone have emphasized, basically, you're the heat source, the motor that you have inside of you. Once you get up and you start dressing, the layers that you sleep in, I hang them up. If there's a tree or a line, I hang them up and I beat the frost out of them. If it's extremely cold, minus 30s, 40s, you have something called evapotranspiration, where it basically goes from ice directly into vapor. It doesn't actually have to change into a liquid before it goes into vapor. So you can take your layers in there, hang them up a little bit, beat the ice out of them, and you do that every morning with their clothes and with their sleeping layers. My sleeping bag, I do the same thing. I do that in the summer anyways also. I'll try to hang up my sleeping bag to get any moisture that I had in that, and I basically, if there's sun, I'll put it in the sun, but I basically try to eliminate some of that moisture that's been captured in there. Ron was talking about the capturing of layers in there, or of moisture within it, and it can freeze. There was an expedition to the poles by a guy named Will Steger out of Minnesota, an international expedition to the North Pole back in the early 80s. They had minus 30, 40 polar guard bags. By the end of the expedition, they probably weighed 7 to 8 pounds at that time. By the end of the expedition, they weighed over 60. Your body transpires about 1 liter or 1,000 milliliters of water every night. You breathe about the equal amount. And so imagine that getting in there and slowly collecting over within your equipment and within your gear. It does add up for a bit, but also it takes away the insulating qualities of everything that you have. So hang out your bag, equipment like that. And then one thing I forgot to mention is make sure, especially if you have a down bag, put your bag out early when you get to camp, because they take a while to build up the loft. And the loft is what's going to provide you with insulation. So you should ensure you do that. Any questions?
What's the layer in your bag? Like what kind of material?
Oh, this right here?
Yeah.
You can actually use this one. I honestly don't remember what it is.
But it's not cotton.
No, it's not a cotton.
No, never cotton.
Yeah, it's
Never
a polyester. My summer bag, I have sort of an old sheet thing that I've been using for a few years. But you can use a thin fleece. You can use materials. Actually, I assume you have some liners yourself for winter.
Yeah, but it'll be made out of the similar materials as your base layers.
Exactly.
So basically, your body heat pushes the moisture right through it into the next layers.
Sure.
And at that stage inside the warm bag, that's happening all the time. Where the moisture is going to collect is in your insulation somewhere.
And some of them will have hoods on them. Some of them won't. Some of them just go around the neck. The other thing is they can have zippers, but you don't have to have the zipper. You can actually make some of these. If you can find a material that suits your purpose in a discount area, if you're just using it before you get really involved in this, just sew one up. And all you have to do is literally sew it up to each side, make it a little bit bigger, and you can pull it over yourself like a sleeve. It's nice if you have a tab on it. Let me warn you about the tab. For those who aren't familiar with sleeping in a mummy bag, sometimes it can feel rather confining. So making sure that you have a big tab on it and something that you can find in the middle of the night so you don't feel restricted or panicked. And also put it on the side that you're comfortable to grab. The other thing you might want to consider, if you don't want a tab on it, just make it extra large. That way you can just pull it in and bunch it around your neck or fold it over your front. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Yes.
If you don't have a bag that would be quite warm enough.
Good segue. Now, I want to bring this out. These are two old, actually I bought this from a Fresh Air Experience in Regina from 1977. And it's lost a little bit, it's fell off, but what you can do is you can use a double bag system. And it is very effective. And actually before I could afford a winter bag, I used a double system for probably close to 2 decades. That's all I could afford. And basically what I've done is I've taken 2 3-season bags and I've just put one inside the other. I will use a liner like this. inside of this. The Canadian military system, I don't know if they still use this system, but for probably 50 or 60 years, they used the double bag system, which had 2 bags in it, and you had to do both zippers up. Theirs had a separate hood, but as you can see, it's nice having the zippers on the same side if possible. If you have one decent 3-season bag, and then even if you have a rectangular bag that you can pull over that, if you have a quilt or anything else that you can pull on over that, that probably is a good way to start. Now, in the introduction letter that Steve talked about, he talked about winter camping in a controlled setting. If you're wondering about something, it's always a good idea to test these things before you go on a longer trip. For this camp coming up, we will be around, so we can help you at any time of the day or night. At least Steve can. So we can assist you with this. If you have any questions prior or tonight, please ask, or even prior to the camp. Biggest thing is that you make the point of coming out and using what you have available to you, as well as borrowing from friends, because winter camping really does open up a whole new world, and it's very refreshing and very enjoyable for those who have ever been out. So like I said, a double bag system is very effective.
We also have some bags that you can borrow. So if you need to borrow something, just indicate what you'd like to borrow, because the school board has about 30 bags, right, Steve?
Roughly, yeah.
About 30 bags that can be borrowed. They're graciously allowing for, like, Regina Public Schools is doing that. And then there's foamies, like the close-up foam that Joe was showing on his bottom layer. We've got a bunch of those too that we can lend out to you from the school that I work at. And I'll talk a little bit later about more of the gear that we have that's for loan. But I mean, I'd encourage anybody to buy things for themselves if they're going to do this a lot, you know, get it. But if you can't, and it's an introduction course, you can borrow something too. So it's kind of like the big borrow steal kind of situation where, you know, you get everything that you need and you can, and then go and have fun and then start building up your gear, because some of us have garages full of lots of stuff.
I also wanted to mention too, we have a really nice mixture of men and women. If any of the women have any questions, specifically from a woman's perspective, email Steve. Natalie's here as well as my wife.
Yeah, let's go back. I think we were laughing over that, but there's Natalie, right? And then Joe's wife.
And my
as
wife,
well.
Lori, will also be out there. And Lori has an extensive amount of winter camping as well as regular camping experience. And she can get back to you directly on some of the questions that you might have. She's facilitated winter workshops specifically for women. And so, like I said, if you do have those questions, please feel free to contact us. And it doesn't, for the guys, it doesn't include getting dates. Okay, any other questions?
One thing I'd like to point out, Joe, is that your double bag system, we deal with a lot of you know, school outdoor ed clubs, Cub Scouts, stuff like that. And again, they're on a pretty limited budget. And our number one sort of temperature rating bag that we sell is a -7 to -10 bag.
Mm-hmm.
And that is normally like a mummy-shaped bag, but that inside of a very inexpensive rectangular bag works well in a number of ways. And in the system that I've used in the past, what's happened is that frost we talked about has settled in between the two bags.
Yes.
So when you go to want to dry stuff out, or you're multiple days using it, it's really easy to get rid of, because your heat is generally sufficient enough to push that moisture vapor through the first bag, and it collects in that thinner over bag, and it's right there to get rid of it. You know, take it out, like you said, brush it off, beat it off, and if you're multiple day using, it's great. If you get home at night, or the next day, or 2 days later, you're drying your stuff out, it dries really, really quickly.
That's a good point.
It's a really good spot to collect that.
Good. Thank you, Ron. Yes, Steve.
What do you say to blankets being instead of like a second? Is there a way that you could use your blanket as the over or inside as an extra?
You could. The challenge is if you put it on the inside, they have a habit of getting twisted. They also take up a lot of space. Your body is actually heating up that airspace in between, and if you don't allow enough, if you're restricting the flow of air through there, you may get cold. If you're putting it over your sleeping bag, you might want to consider putting a couple hems in it, or something just to keep the bag together so it keeps on top of your sleeping bag. Otherwise, it will slide off, just in the nature of the nylon material. So that's what I would suggest, even if you tuck it in. You can use bobby pins. You can use, like I said, quick little stitch that you can pull it up over your bag. And also you might want to consider putting the seam underneath right in the middle as opposed to on top. That way you're still having still overlaying your bag.
A lot of this winter camping, because I feel like we have 2 sleeping bags or blankets, a lot of just car winter camping, because or it's like I feel like this is getting a lot heavier than summer.
Winter camping has a lot of bulk.
Yeah.
You're using, depending on the temperature, you could be using anywhere between 6,000 and 10,000 calories a day. So from a food perspective, in the summer, I look at about 1.5 pounds of food per day. In winter, I'm almost doubling that. I'm using about 2.5 pounds minimum. You're looking at the same thing with equipment. From the multiple layers that Steve talked about to the layers of your sleeping bag, it is about bulk, because bulk is oftentimes about, and design of clothing is about the insulating. So you almost feel like you're going car camping sometimes.
Yeah, I guess then. Yeah, so I guess then you have to plan. I don't know, have some kind of sled or a super big backpack, or I'm not too sure.
What we do is we actually have a polka, which is basically a Scandinavian word for a pole sled. So we'll carry like a day pack or a 30 to 40 liter pack on our backs, sometimes more depending on what we both have to carry. And then we'll have the sled that we pull behind us with our sleeping bag and major gear. And having that is nice. Its only challenge is if you have hilly terrain in other areas, or depending on how to train, it can be a little bit cumbersome. But you do have both. And you do feel like you're car camping sometimes.
Yeah.
And the good thing for this camp is, since we are car camping, bring it. You know, if you got something that you don't, we're not limited by weight. If you have something that you want to bring just in case, or extra layers, stuff like that, you can have that kind of thing to hand, because we're not weight conscious on this one as much.
Yeah, let us know if you need something too. We all have closets full.
Garage.
I think maybe it's a good chance to just talk briefly on tents.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Derek, very much.
I'll slide by.
So we've got a winter tent set up here, and obviously we've got 3-season tents and we've got 4-season tents, and there's some subtle differences between the two. And maybe I could get Ron to just talk about a winter tent specifically, about kind of what the difference is, where the benefit is if you wanted to use a winter tent.
Well, common thread here has been moisture and moisture management. The same thing in your tent. Joe was talking about all the things you're sticking inside your sleeping bag. And you're thinking, well, why would it just be in my tent? Well, your tent's not heated. You're not going to be hauling around something that's going to heat your tent for the course of the night. This is your personal space, and this is going to be the warm space. This guy here can be warm temporarily. There's certain ways of, getting away from a tent heater and so on. I mean, I've used a man-made coolant candy dish about yay big, shoelaces cut up into the wax into there, set it on something that is not going to get knocked over inside your tent. Light those wicks, and 3 or 4 or 5 foot heat that gives out for a short period of time. So while you're getting ready for bed, getting up in the morning or whatever, you can heat up this space very, very easily. So a winter tent, you can totally enclose the inner tent inside of this. So this guy here, there's a tent fly over top. Some people sometimes will actually not even take the fly with them, and they'll use just the inner body. Because the tent that I've used pre-dome was a Sierra Design Street tripod tent, and we didn't use a fly. It had a vent hole in the top, and you just leave the door cracked open and allow some venting through it. This Marmot tent has a nifty little system where you can actually open up the fly vent. There's a little support in here that is adjustable like Velcro, so you can open that up and allow that moist, humid air that's coming off of your breath, as Joe talked about, a liter of water. I mean, think about it. 2 people sleep in this tent, you dump 2 liters of water in there, where it's going to end up, right? Bring your skates. because you could be using those. So there's a lot of moisture that you have to get rid of all the time. And if you're using a tent in the summertime, or even like fall, when it's maybe not really cold out, you have to again make sure that it's vented out. And there's and if it's a really still night, even more so, because it just collects, right? So venting is very critical. There's 2 vents on either side, get some cross ventilation going on, and your winter tents are generally going to have a fly that goes very close to the bottom. It does give you that 2-layer system in there when you are putting some heat inside. So you can actually bang it up with some snow on the side if you want. Pegging your tent down is sometimes a challenge. These little Velcro pieces don't work that well in the snow, I can tell you. Joe's brought along a snow peg, so you can take these guys and you can bury them in, and you can pile snow on top, pack it down feet, pour a little water on there, freeze it, it's in there. There's plates you actually get, very lightweight aluminum plates you can kind of bury down. Sometimes you can pull a piece of deadfall out of the bush and stake it to something that's going to hold it there, because if the wind comes up, with your tent, distorting, and it's not going to blow away because you're in it, right? The other thing is that most winter tents are going to have a very, like if I can put a lot of weight in this baby, it can snow all at once. It can be heavy, wet, laden snow, and this is not going to collapse. This tent has got a specifically designed sidewall to it, so it's a little bit straighter, and the poles are pre-bent so that it actually supports. And the other thing that it actually has is there's a pad inside to keep a space between your fly and the inner tent wall. So there's a vestibule in the back and the front. You can again crack the door open to allow heat or cold air to come in through the bottom, rise up through the tent, and take the moisture and humidity out. But other than if you have a 3-season tent, you can modify it. You can actually put little sticky Velcro tabs. You can put fabric over top of that and close it in. Because we don't get a lot of heavy wet snow in our part of the world, and we don't get very many heavy snowfalls. So a good 3-season tent lots of times can get you by. The downside is that the heat can escape when you're inside trying to heat that space up a little bit while you're getting dressed, getting undressed, getting in and out of that bag. But I don't know if there's anything much else we can talk about. You can check the weather before you get out. Look and see if you're in bear country. It'll be a polar bear, I guess. Everybody's going to be sleeping. But that would be kind of it. Any questions?
So say I had a limelight backpack, how would I adapt that?
Basically, what you need to do is the mesh areas on the inside. Have a way that you can cover up those areas. So inside, you want to be able to control the venting and the closing off from the inside. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can buy like ripstop, nylon, and just you can put Velcro in around the area, and you can Velcro that on, because you can seal it up, and then you can open it up, because it's and I think the lima has fly vents, right? Yes, I think there is. Yeah, that's probably the biggest situation. And if you don't have a vented fly, leave the thing off. You'll have less ability to maintain the heat on the inside. But you know what? It's a very short time that you're actually trying to heat the tent anyway. It's there to protect you from the wind. It's because you want to, when you have that things, if you don't want to have a wind chill factor inside your tent.
We have some tents with the school too. So if you need tents and you want to make new friends, they're 4-person tents. So they're Eurekas, like we got them here years ago.
Line or
yeah, they're is it the Apex?
Yeah.
4 TC.
Yeah.
So they're great. We take kids out all the time winter camping, and the kids are fine. So we've got I think 5 or 6 of those 4-person tents, and so you're welcome to borrow, but let us know what you need, and then we can put it all together. We'll take everything we've got in a big trailer anyway, so it'll be like we'll have extra stuff too. Somebody needs something or forgot something. Let us know in advance.
So we violated two things that I thought were just things you never did in tents. So,
starting a stove,
eating.
Yeah, flames and food. So you guys are saying it's okay.
Well, we don't have to worry about the food, right?
I guess so,
There's no
but
bears
the
and there's no
squirrels or
animals.
the rabbits are going to come get
The rabbits
you're,
and squirrels I can get to.
It's frozen anyway.
all the flame, all the tents sold in North America are have a flame retardancy to them. Now, having said that, doesn't mean that they will burn enough heat, right? But if you start to go up, but if you're doing a stove on the inside, you have to be extremely cautious and careful about how you don't want it to be knocked over or get it like you're not going to start at the edge of the wall and have your pot there. It's going to be inside where some of the tents that we used to handle had basically a half zip in the bottom, and you peel it back and you put your stove right on the snow underneath you. Haven't seen those for a while, but you know, it's something that is, you know, you need to be very careful with it.
I use a candle lantern. I hang
Yeah.
a candle lantern in my tent, and I just put an extra carabiner in between the chain that's on the candle lantern and the top of the tent. I put another couple of carabiners so that it's a little bit off of the fly and closer to me. And then I have a little reflector around it that helps push the heat down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much that'll take a little bit of any bit of moisture or condensation out of the tent. Like even in the summertime, you get up, and just light that for 5 minutes, and you're just awesome.
Actually, a candle gives off about 250 calories of heat, which is the same as a human body.
One candle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can get Chandelier makes like a 3 candle lantern.
Yeah.
So that's actually a little bit heavier, bulkier, but for winter
It
camping,
really
works.
pushes the heat. Yeah.
It really does. Yeah.
And Nat and I, we camped in the 3-season tents in the winter, and you can, like Ron was saying, you can pile snow. So you can do some things to make a really, really meshy tent. Like I've got a full mesh tent with a fly similar to that. And you will notice the difference between that and a summer tent that maybe has a lot of nylon on. But you can get by too. So if that is what we have, just keep in mind you maybe don't want like an 8 or 10-person tent that is like a mansion in there either, because again, if you're looking at
Don't buy what we call the condo. Those things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the key to that is if you want to be able to pile a bit of snow as your fly does come as far down as possible. And the reason why your good outdoor tents will come down this far is that the breathable fabric on the inside comes down this far. The cheaper tents will take their waterproof fabric and they'll run it up very, very high because they want to get away with a little leaky fly, right? So this, you got double fabric, but it works, right? And you can actually have that versatility of like I said, piling. And
You're piling the
one
snow
of
up
the
right
biggest
against
problems
the
is,
fly?
pardon?
You're piling the snow up right against the fly?
Just to close it off,
Oh, okay.
you know, so you're not getting the wind coming this way up underneath the fly and going inside where it's really meshy, and then the heat is just kind of going away.
But just leave a little bit for venting then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna conclude what we're doing here for the broadcast, and then welcome to stay and shop around and take a look around. And there's some other things that we're gonna do that the people out on the internet can't do. So we're gonna stop it there. But I'd like to thank Joe Milligan, coming from Sask Parks, that we partnered with them to be able to use Buffalo Pound Provincial Park, and Sask Parks is really encouraging the use of their parks in the wintertime. They're not a one-season outfit, so it's to do that. And I'd like to thank Ron for hosting us at Fresh Air Experience tonight. It's really fantastic to be in and amongst all the gear, and my wife is worried about me being in the store right now. And we're Steve and Jason, and we're with SaskOutdoors, and we're going to be leading the experience out at Buffalo Pound with you. And Joe's going to be there. His wife Lori's going to be there. There's a lot of people with a lot of experience. And there's a lot of people amongst yourselves that have a lot of varied experience as well. So it's going to be a great opportunity to share with everybody and do everything you need to do. And like I told you before, we do have gear to loan out. We've got stoves and tents and sleeping bags and all the rest of it. And I hope that you'll be emailing in. Email is the best, because then we can actually put it